the Pathless. Like with many games, it takes more than a few days with it to really form an opinion and impression of it. The Pathless doesn't have the best introduction, and for the first half hour I was actually thinking of putting it down. The story is not really clear. You have no idea who you are, and there is next to no dialogue for the longest time. You play as this masked woman figure only known as the Hunter. She sails to a dark and mysterious island, seemingly with much purpose. The land she finds is dead and forgotten, and the inhabitants are long deceased. In these lands there once ruled huge god animals known as the Tall Ones. The eldest of them all and the creator of the land, Eagle Mother. Over time there was a figure who questioned these gods and their lack of empathy for humans. This led to this figure taking up sacred weapons and powers in order to corrupt and control the gods, the God Slayer. Many have tried to stop the God Slayer before you, and their bodies and memories remain to impart knowledge to the hunter and facilitate some tiny snippets of game lore to the player. The game's visual style looks a bit reminiscent of the cartoon Samurai Jack. There is definitely a huge Mongolian style to this game, if not that being exactly what it represents. Like I said, it's not really clear. The game revolves around shooting these talismans that float everywhere on the map. They act as forms of stamina regen and speed boost items. The movement and camera angle are really hard to get used to. When you run really fast, the camera pulls so far back and has this sort of field of view distortion. It has to do this because at the rate at which you have to aim and shoot targets to maintain your speed and momentum is really high. Controls are a bit finicky, if not extremely simple. Just aiming seemed to feel far too hit and miss and often meant running too far past the target or just aiming at the wrong thing. The bow auto-aims to these speed talismans when you draw the bow, and the holding time needed to hold the bow charge is displayed on the talismans, so you have a display of when to release the bow. The charge differs when you're near or far from a target, and even much later in the game, target time. It's all really simple a movement tool, but felt wonky and restrictive. I don't think I ever really got used to it, nor did it work correctly most times. You can jump before your arrow hits a target, and the speed boost that comes to you will hit you in the air and bump you up higher a little bit. You can also use this method to sort of grapple into the air. Movement is really all about keeping that flow going, shooting new targets before you start slowing down. But of course your aim can be off when you release, or a tree gets in the way of your shot. My entire first impression of the game were that it's some kind of movement-based visual narrative game, essentially not much to it. But then things change for the better. As soon as you go to restore the Eagle Mother, she leaves behind a tiny eagle as she dies. This eagle might be the Eagle Mother reborn, or her little child. As soon as, immediately when you get this little eagle, that's it. That's the point the game branches out into something different and adds so much more character to the game. You see, it's because this little eagle will follow you now, hopping around on the ground when inside enclosed buildings, giving off little cries. It flies around and sits on your shoulder and perches on interesting objects. It does have this strange obsession with sitting rudely upon dead bodies and skeletons, not sure what that's about. You can grab a hold of the eagle when you jump and then gain the ability to glide around. It looks a little weird because the eagle looks too small to hold you, but it still manages. It also gives you what is basically a double jump. Also, the eagle can be commanded with a whistle to pick up and move objects for you. The eagle then follows you with whatever it's carrying, which then expands the game into this Zelda-like puzzler with pressure plate puzzles and such that require the eagle's help. You have to plan your movement though, because you can't double jump when the eagle is holding something. So you have to get it to move as far as possible with the object, then have it drop it so it can pick you back up to glide. Then whistle again when looking at the object to get the eagle to retrieve it again. Sometimes there will be times the eagle gets scared of these red-eyed statues. It causes the eagle to cower in fear, and it won't be able to help you until you destroy or turn off the statue. This is exactly a mechanic that was in The Last Guardian, which is about close enough a comparison to most of the gameplay. That, or more accurately, Ico, or Shadow of the Colossus. You see, you need to go to the region that corrupt gods roam. In these regions, you have to explore around the map in order to find these tablets that will then be inserted into towers, 3 towers in total that will blind the god of that area and allow you to face them. Once the god is cleansed, you can then gain power to be able to flap higher in the air, which then opens up access to the next region and the next corrupted god. All gods cleansed will eventually lead to the realm of the God Slayer high in the sky. Where it turns into Shadow of the Colossus, well, it's when you are detected entering the realm by the corrupted god animal of the area. These giant and monstrous gods will then actually roam their domain, hunting you. Their aura spreads out in this giant red storm of evil energy, a massive sphere that envelops the god and moves quickly across the region. Anything that enters the sphere gets sucked into this frightening realm of death and decay, you included. Should the god reach you, you'll get forced into an encounter with it. The first thing that happens is your eagle gets blown away by the evil force to then lay helpless, screeching its pitiful cries for help like a small helpless child. The god then emerges and its gaze spreads out before it, searching for you. You have to move carefully towards the eagle to escape, but you have to remain still should you enter the god's gaze. You also have to be aware of where the god moves to next, and be well out of its path should you do not wish to be caught. I don't think you actually die in this game. I think you must eventually just have to reload a checkpoint, but you usually just lose this currency of XP that goes towards gaining more flaps for the eagle. The red light, green light event is usually just time wasting really. So you have to explore the region while keeping an eye out for which way it's headed and go the opposite way. After pushing back the god and getting free, the eagle, having used its powers, comes out of the task all burnt and covered in darkness. You have this cute little task of slowly wiping the areas on the eagle until the darkness is removed and your buddy recovered. A nice little bonding session where the eagle has its cute little animations and responses to your care. Without a map, you just have to look out for anything interesting or glowing that might lead to a new tablet. You have a mask that you can put on that reveals hidden walls or objects that might hide something good. Or you can use it when really high up to see better anything of interest. There are secret jumping puzzles, lanterns to light, or bells to ring in order. These little activities reward you with XP towards more flaps. You need flaps to get higher up cliff sides and into tall structures. Plus, it's always better to stay gliding in the air to move around the region because it gives you a better view up high and you cover more area that way. The main puzzles will involve a bit of button pushing, switch pulling, and manipulation of objects around you. It's all about first observing the area and objects around it in order to find out what you need to do, which is not always incredibly clear. You might have to line up an arrow shot through fire that will bounce to the unlit torches in its path. You might have to shoot an arrow through a certain number of ring statues before the shot hits a target, using the eagle to move things into place while you try to get a good angle on your shot. These bigger puzzles usually reward a tablet to power the light towers in the area, that then unlock a battle against that area's god. The first segment of these fights, you actually have to just get into range of the fleeing god, meaning a long and protracted race across the region after it, having to maintain speed by shooting the talismans to give you more stamina, all the while having to dodge trees, rocks, jump over water, and avoid things that are on fire. Each god has increasingly difficult moves and attacks that will fire off while you're chasing. Huge balls of fire that drop on you and then create ground hazards. It might jump and send out a fiery shockwave that you have to jump over. You have to get just close enough to be able to target the eyes that are on either side of the god's body in order to advance to the next stage of the fight. Here you'll be teleported to the god's nest, a large arena. This is when you have to go more one-on-one with the monstrous beast rather than run, so it's all about movement and jumping to avoid attacks. Some gods charge at you, some swipe a claw, and others fire off lasers. You only have a brief moment to react and limited movement tools. You have to keep an eye out for small windows of opportunity when the boss reveals a weak target. It might be readying an attack and a quick reactive shot will stop it but also damage the god. Later fights against gods switch their next few phases into movement sections where you have obstacles to avoid or have to hide behind walls in order to continue the fight. The final phase being the boss's last desperate attempt to stop you, but will end with your eagle shooting itself straight into the boss and allowing the hunter to cleanse the beast and free the god's soul. That's about all there is to most of the game. Go to each region in order, explore the region for the tablet puzzles obscurely hidden in the map. Keep an eye out for some flap XP, learn a bit of the lore from the dead, and collect enough tablets to face the region's god. There is a little bit extra you can do in the region once the god's soul is free, going out and collecting any remaining tablets, which then unlock a gift of an ability from the god you saved, like a super flap that can shoot you high in the air, or constant stamina regen. There isn't anything else. No actual combat where you use your bow against enemies, no NPCs, no massive dungeons. There is a really nice Zelda vibe and huge similarities to Shadow of the Colossus. It's more about the game's world and design, mysterious crumbling ruins, long dead warriors telling a story of their last moments, ancient statues and towers and mechanisms of unknown use and origins. The music is really nice too, with Mongolian chanting and fantastic orchestral tunes to help stave off the monotony of exploration, because it inevitably sets in, and it sets in pretty fast. The gameplay loop is, sadly, a little too samey. You end up just doing the same chore of enter new region, try to scout the map for tablets, avoid bosses while exploring, go to fight boss, then move to next region to do the exact same thing over again. The only variance seems to stem from the amount of flaps you have at your disposal to reach higher areas, or it just boils down to a god boss fight increasing in complexity and difficulty. Most of the puzzles are incredibly similar and have very little variance. It's a little strange that I don't think you even have a health meter either, so you can just hurt yourself falling or get repeatedly hit by a boss and it doesn't seem to have any repercussions or effect, none that I found. The Pathless only managed to hold my attention, well, pretty much solely because of the eagle. It's adorably cute jumping around on the ground. The bond you build when caring for the bird and wiping its poor roasted wings, that's mostly what invested me. The pain of hearing its poor little cries was just heart-wrenching and really effective at making tense moments and fights more impactful. It's a rather simple but repetitive game with next to no story told through dialogue or even objective markers to guide you. It's short, fairly easy to finish, and not much in the way of diverse objectives and exploration. There is no combat outside of the boss fights, but those boss fights made up for it by being really epic and dramatic stages and phases of battle to fight your way through. The movement is always unfamiliar and wonky. Exploration can be at times really tedious. No map either means you end up scouring over the same place you've already been to when you're looking for every last tablet, treasure, or flap XP stash. It's not really a game I can recommend when I think about it. It really just felt like a way for me to waste a bit of time for a bit. I know other people really like the game, but I think it mostly just boils down to its style, Mongolian aesthetic, and the goddamn bird. That and it makes you nostalgic for it. So if you think you can help out, why not just go take a read of my Patreon page? Thanks everyone for watching this really quick review. Next week is a new game I'm really excited to review for you guys. See you then. Ox out.